The Christmas gift that cost me everything. The Christmas lights on Peachtree Street twinkled, but Laverne Washington barely noticed them as she walked up the front steps of her home on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. Her arms were loaded with grocery bags, collard greens, and sweet potatoes for Christmas dinner still 10 days away. Laverne shifted the bags to one arm and fumbled for her keys, nearly dropping everything when she noticed the official-looking envelope taped to her front door. Her heart gave an uncomfortable lurch. In 67 years of life, she'd learned that official envelopes never brought good news. She set the groceries down on the porch swing and carefully peeled the envelope from the door. The return address made her stomach drop. Fulton County Sheriff's Office. With trembling fingers, she tore it open. Notice of eviction. The words jumped out at her in bold black letters. You are hereby notified that the property located at 1247 Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, Atlanta, Georgia, has been sold, and you must vacate the premises within 30 days. Laverne read it again. And then a third time? This had to be some kind of mistake. This was her house. She and Robert had bought it in 1985, raised Darnell here, celebrated 40 years of marriage within these walls. She'd buried Robert from this house 3 years ago. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the paper. She sank down onto the porch swing, the December air suddenly feeling much colder. But even as her mind raced with confusion, a small, terrible voice in the back of her head whispered the truth. She thought back to 2 years ago, to that conversation in her kitchen with Darnell and that smooth-talking man he'd brought with him. "Mama, this is just smart planning," Darnell had said, sitting at her kitchen table. "You give me the house now, and we avoid all those estate taxes, but nothing changes. You live here for the rest of your life. It's just paperwork." Laverne looked down at the eviction notice again. Just paperwork. But she didn't know yet that this was only the beginning. She didn't know that her own son had been planning this for months. She didn't know what was really waiting for her. Flashback, 1985. The front door of 1247. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive stuck a little. Robert put his shoulder against it and pushed, then stepped back with a grin. "Welcome home, Mrs. Washington." Laverne, 32 years old and glowing with happiness, stepped over the threshold for the first time as the owner. Little Darnell, barely 5 years old, ran past both of them squealing with delight. "It's ours, Mama? Really ours?" "Really ours, baby." Laverne looked around the empty living room. "We're going to make this house a home." Robert pulled her close. $42,000. Cleaned out our savings, but it's worth it. This is our piece of the American dream, baby. Nobody can take this from us. Present day. Laverne stood up on unsteady legs, grabbed her groceries, and fumbled with her keys. Inside, the house was exactly as she'd left it that morning. The Christmas decorations she'd started putting up were half finished. Her grandmother's nativity scene on the mantel. Robert's favorite ornaments waiting in boxes. For 40 years, this house had been her sanctuary. Now, apparently, it wasn't even hers anymore. Laverne set the groceries on the kitchen counter and immediately reached for her phone. Her fingers were still trembling as she scrolled to find Darnell's number. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "Darnell, this is your mother. I need you to call me back immediately. There's been some kind of terrible mistake." Her voice cracked. "I got an eviction notice today. Call me back as soon as you get this." She hung up and stared at her phone, willing it to ring. It remained silent. The house suddenly felt too quiet. Laverne walked through the rooms, her footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors Robert had refinished with his own hands. In the living room, the walls were covered with family photos. Darnell as a baby, his first day of school, his graduation from Morehouse. Her and Robert on their wedding day in 1978, both of them so young and full of dreams. Flashback, 1993. 8-year-old Darnell stood on a stepladder, carefully hanging an ornament on the Christmas tree. Robert held the ladder steady, watching his son with obvious pride. "That's it, little man. Right there on that branch." "Like this, Daddy?" "Perfect. You're a natural." Laverne came in from the kitchen carrying hot chocolate and cookies. "My 2 favorite men decorating our tree." She'd been so happy then. They all had been. Present day. Laverne's phone buzzed, a text from Sister Francine at First Baptist Church, reminding her about choir practice tomorrow evening. She sank onto the sofa, still clutching the eviction notice. Her mind drifted back to that day 2 years ago. It had been a Sunday afternoon in November. Laverne had just returned from church when Darnell had called. "Mama, I'm coming by with someone I want you to meet, a financial advisor. He's got some ideas that could really help with your situation." "What situation? I'm doing just fine." "I know, Mama, but this is about protecting your assets, planning for the future. Just hear him out, okay?" An hour later, Darnell had arrived with a man in an expensive suit. Bryant Thompson, he'd introduced himself, shaking her hand with a grip that was just a little too firm. They'd sat at her kitchen table, and Bryant Thompson had spread out papers and charts and numbers that made Laverne's head spin. "Mrs. Washington, do you know how much this house is worth now?" Laverne had shrugged. "Robert and I paid $42,000 for it in 1985. Bryant Thompson had smiled. "Mrs. Washington, with the way this neighborhood is developing, this property is now worth approximately $700,000. Laverne had nearly choked. $700,000? The land alone is worth that much. This whole area is being revitalized, which is wonderful, but it also means estate taxes that could cost your son hundreds of thousands when you pass away." The casual way he'd said, "when you pass away," had made Laverne uncomfortable. She'd looked at Darnell, who was nodding seriously. "That's why I wanted you to meet Mr. Thompson, Mama. He can help us avoid those taxes, completely legally." "How?" "You gift the property to your son now," Bryant Thompson had explained. "As a live-in gift. But here's the important part." He'd leaned forward. "You retain a life estate. That means you have the legal right to live here for the rest of your life. Nothing changes for you. But on paper, the house belongs to Darnell. When you pass away, there are no estate taxes." It had sounded complicated, but Darnell had assured her it was standard practice. "Mama, this is what smart people do. Estate planning. I've been researching it ever since Daddy passed. This protects your home and protects me." "But if I sign the house over to you, how do I know I can still live here?" "Because it's written right into the agreement," Bryant Thompson had said, pulling out another document. "Right here. Grantor retains life estate and exclusive right to occupy the property until death." "It's ironclad, Mrs. Washington." Laverne had hesitated. Something felt wrong. "I don't know, Darnell. Maybe I should talk to a lawyer." Darnell's face had tightened. "Mama, lawyers cost money. Mr. Thompson is doing this as a favor. If you hire some lawyer, you'll spend thousands for them to tell you the same thing. This is standard estate planning." Your son is right, Bryant Thompson had added. This is very common, especially in the African American community, where generational wealth transfer is so important. You worked hard for this house. Don't let the government take half of it in taxes. Laverne had looked at Darnell, her only child. He'd been looking at her with such earnestness. This is really what's best? Yes, Mama, I promise. I'm trying to protect what you and Daddy built. So she'd signed the papers, and for 2 years, nothing had changed. Laverne had continued living in her house, paying the taxes, maintaining the yard. Until today. Laverne's phone rang. It was Darnell. Mama, I got your message. What's going on? Darnell, I got an eviction notice. It says the house has been sold and I have to be out in 30 days. This has to be some kind of mistake. There was a long pause. Too long. Darnell, did you hear me? Mama, I need you to calm down. Something in his tone made her blood run cold. Calm down? I'm being evicted. Listen, Mama, you're not understanding the situation correctly. Then help me understand. What's going on? Another pause. Look, I can't talk about this right now. I'm at work. Darnell, I have an eviction notice taped to my door. Mama, please, not now. We'll discuss this later. No, we'll discuss it now. Did you sell my house? Silence. Then, it's not that simple. Did you or did you not sell my house? You don't understand. There were circumstances. Kendra and I had to make some decisions. Did you sell my house, Darnell? His voice turned defensive. It's not your house, Mama. Legally, it's been my house for 2 years. You remember signing those papers? Laverne felt the floor drop out. But you said I could live here for the rest of my life. That man said I had a life estate. That agreement was contingent on certain conditions. What conditions? Mama, you're making this harder than it needs to be. We found someone willing to pay good money. In this market, we couldn't pass that up. We? Who is we? Where am I supposed to go? Look, Kendra's been researching some really nice senior living communities. There's one in Decatur. Activities, meals included, transportation. You'd probably be happier there. This is my home, Darnell. Mama, don't be dramatic. You're 67. You don't need a 4-bedroom house. It's too much for you. The neighborhood, it's not what it used to be. I maintain this house just fine. The roof needs replacing. The electrical system is outdated. Kendra says the whole place needs thousands in work. We can't afford to keep putting money into it. You haven't put a dime into this house. I pay the taxes. I pay for repairs. Look, I don't have time for this argument. I'm at work. We'll talk later. No, we'll talk now. You cannot sell my house. I already did, Mama. His voice was cold now. The closing was 3 months ago. The new owners have been generous letting you stay this long, but they want to start renovations. You need to start packing. And honestly, you're embarrassing me with this attitude. It's my house now. I'm doing what's best for everyone. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Darnell, please. But the line was already dead. Laverne sat there, staring at her phone in disbelief. Her son, her baby boy, couldn't possibly have sold her home without telling her. But he had. She looked around her living room, at the walls that held 40 years of memories, and for the first time since Robert died, Laverne Washington broke down and wept. Sister Francine Butler found Laverne still crying 2 hours later. She'd let herself in with the spare key, calling out, "Hey, Vern," before stopping short at the sight of her friend crumpled on the sofa. Sweet Jesus, what happened? Francine rushed over. She was a big woman with a bigger heart, and she'd been Laverne's best friend for 30 years. Laverne couldn't speak. She just handed Francine the eviction notice. Francine read it, her expression moving from confusion to fury. "What in the hell is this?" Laverne told her the whole story between sobs. The papers she'd signed, Darnell's promises, the phone call. Francine listened, her face growing darker. "That boy of yours," Francine finally said, her voice shaking, "needs his behind whipped. I don't care if he is 42. I don't understand, Francie. How could he do this?" "It's that wife of his," Francine spat. "I'm sorry, Vern, but Kendra has had her nose in the air since day one. She's always been trying to pull him away from his roots." Laverne knew there was truth in that. Kendra came from what she called a professional family. Her father was a doctor, her mother a lawyer. She'd met Darnell at a corporate networking event, and from the beginning, she'd made it clear she had expectations. "She never liked coming here," Laverne said softly. "I heard worse than that," Francine said grimly. "You remember last Easter? I was in the bathroom at church and heard her on her phone in the hallway. She said, and I quote, 'Darnell's mother is sweet, but she's basically a charity case at this point. That house? It's hood adjacent at best. I told Darnell our children will not be visiting there. I don't care if it hurts her feelings. We didn't work this hard to have our kids around that element.'" Laverne felt like she'd been slapped. "She said that?" "Word for word. I wanted to tell you then, but I didn't want to hurt you." Francine squeezed her hand. "And 2 months ago, I heard her tell someone at the grocery store that elderly people shouldn't be allowed to live alone after a certain age. It's a drain on society. They can't maintain their properties, they're a safety risk, and honestly, they're taking up valuable real estate that young families could use." "My God," Laverne whispered. "She's poison, Vern, and she's turned your boy against you." Laverne closed her eyes. "Robert saw through her from the beginning." "Your husband was a smart man." Francine stood up. "First thing tomorrow, we're seeing a lawyer, a real lawyer. My nephew Raymond is a real estate attorney. He'll know what to do." "I don't have money for a lawyer, Francie." "We'll figure that out. Right now, you need to eat." Francine marched into the kitchen and started cooking. Within minutes, the smell of collard greens filled the house, and despite everything, Laverne felt a tiny bit of comfort. That night, Laverne lay in bed staring at the ceiling. This bedroom had been hers and Robert's for 40 years. Robert had died in this bed, holding her hand, his last words, "Take care of yourself, baby, and watch out for Darnell. He's a good boy, but he's weak. Don't let anyone take advantage of you." At the time, she'd thought Robert was worried about con artists. Now she understood. Robert had seen something in their son that she'd refused to acknowledge. Flashback, 2018. Laverne had invited Darnell and his new girlfriend Kendra over for Sunday dinner. She'd made all of Darnell's favorites: fried chicken, mac and cheese, collard greens, cornbread. Kendra had arrived wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than Laverne's monthly grocery budget. She'd walked through the house with an appraising eye. "What a charming house. So much character. Very historic." At dinner, Kendra had picked at her food. "Is everything okay with the food, honey?" Laverne had asked. "Oh, it's delicious. I'm just watching my carbs. And salt. My nutritionist has me on a very specific eating plan." She'd smiled that tight smile. "This kind of cooking is fine for people who don't know any better. But once you understand nutrition, You can't go back. Later, Laverne had been in the kitchen when she'd overheard Kendra on the phone in the hallway. No, girl, it's exactly what you'd expect. Old furniture, that smell old houses have, pictures of Black Jesus everywhere. Very Medea's family reunion, if you know what I mean. A laugh. I told Darnell, baby, I love you, but our kids are not growing up coming here for holidays. We're breaking these cycles. He gets it. He wants better too. Laverne had stood frozen at the sink. After dinner, when Kendra had stepped outside to take another call, Robert had leaned over to Darnell. Son, is this really the kind of woman you want to build a life with? What's that supposed to mean? Darnell had bristled. It means she looks down on your mama, on this house, on us, on everything we built. Dad, you're being judgmental. Kendra comes from a different background. She's sophisticated. She's helping me see opportunities I never saw before. Opportunities to what? Be ashamed of where you came from? That's not fair. What's not fair, Robert had said quietly, is a woman who doesn't respect your mama. Mark my words, son. A woman who talks down about the people who raised you will do the same to you eventually. She's using you. That had been one of their last conversations before Robert's heart attack 3 months later. Present day. Raymond Butler had an office downtown. He was a serious young man in his early 30s, wearing glasses and looking concerned as he reviewed the documents Laverne had brought. Mrs. Washington, he finally said, I'm very sorry to tell you this, but these documents appear to be legally binding. You transferred ownership to your son 2 years ago. But what about the life estate? Laverne's voice was pleading. That man said I could live there for the rest of my life. Raymond pulled out one specific page and pointed to dense legal text. This clause here is what they're using. It says the life estate is subject to the new owner's right to sell the property with 90 days written notice to the grantor. You signed this, Mrs. Washington? I never saw that. That man never explained that part. I'm sure he didn't, Raymond said grimly. This is a scam that's becoming increasingly common, especially targeting elderly homeowners in gentrifying neighborhoods. They convince people to sign over their property under the guise of estate planning, but the documents include clauses that allow the new owner to sell out from under them. So there's nothing I can do? Laverne felt tears stinging her eyes. I didn't say that. Raymond leaned forward. There are a few avenues we can explore. First, we can argue this was elder financial abuse and that you signed under fraudulent pretenses. Second, we can examine whether the 90-day notice was properly delivered. The eviction notice only gives you 30 days, which may not comply with the agreement. What does that mean? It means we can fight this, Mrs. Washington. I can't promise we'll win, but we can fight. The problem is, legal proceedings take time, and if the new owners push forward with eviction, how much will this cost? Raymond glanced at Francine. Mrs. Washington, I'm being honest. A case like this could run into tens of thousands in legal fees. But, he held up a hand as he saw the devastation on her face. I believe what happened was wrong. I'll take this on pro bono initially. If we win, we can pursue costs against your son. I don't want to sue my son. Mrs. Washington, Francine said firmly, your son stole your house. What else would you call it? Laverne didn't answer, because deep down, she knew Francine was right. There's something else, Raymond said carefully. I ran a search on this Bryant Thompson. He's not a licensed attorney in Georgia. He's not a certified financial planner. I can't find any legitimate credentials for him at all. What does that mean? It means he's likely a con artist working with your son, which actually helps our case. It's further evidence of fraud. The words hung in the air. Working with your son. Laverne felt something inside her shatter. She'd been holding on to hope that Darnell had been tricked. But no, he'd known. He'd planned it. My own child did this to me, she whispered, her voice breaking. My own baby, the boy I raised. He looked me in the eye and... She couldn't finish. Her whole body began to shake. Not just crying, trembling, like she was freezing from the inside out. Francine pulled her close, and Laverne sobbed against her friend's shoulder, deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to tear something loose in her chest. Raymond looked away, giving them privacy. After a long silence, Laverne pulled back, wiping her eyes. Her face was puffy, exhausted. What do I do now? Now, Raymond said gently, we fight. But Laverne didn't know yet what was waiting in her father's safety deposit box. She didn't know that Robert had seen all of this coming. She didn't know that her worst days were still ahead of her, but so was her salvation. Laverne didn't call Darnell again. Instead, she let Raymond handle all communication. 2 days later, Darnell called her. Mama, I got a letter from some lawyer. What's going on? I hired an attorney to fight this eviction. Mama, you're wasting your money. The sale is final. The new owners have every right. Did you know that Bryant Thompson isn't even a licensed financial advisor? Did you know what you did might constitute elder financial abuse under Georgia law? Silence. Then, Mama, you don't understand the situation. Then explain it to me, Darnell. Explain how my son could sell my house without telling me. Explain how you could cash in for $700,000 and leave your mother homeless. You're not homeless. I told you we found a nice place. A place where you'll be taken care of, where you won't have to worry about maintenance. Kendra says senior living facilities are much better for people your age, safer, with medical staff on site. She says you'll actually be happier. She's researched it extensively. She cares about your well-being. I don't care what Kendra says. This is my home. And honestly, Mama, you're being manipulative. You always do this. Make me feel guilty for trying to build a better life. Kendra says you're emotionally manipulating me, using your age and your grief over Dad to control me. And she's right. You've always been like this. Laverne's breath caught. Manipulative? Yes. You act like I owe you everything just because you're my mother. But I have my own life now. Kendra and I have goals. We want a real house in a good neighborhood. Start a family. Build a future. We needed that money to escape this trap. Trap? Your childhood home is a trap? You know what I mean? This neighborhood, this lifestyle. Kendra says I've been held back by guilt and obligation to you, and she's right. We needed that money to break free and build the life we deserve. And what about my future? You're 67. How much future do you really need? The words hit Laverne like a physical blow. She ended the call without another word. The next Sunday, Laverne went to church but couldn't focus on the sermon. She kept thinking about Darnell's cold voice, about how much future she really needed. After the service, Pastor Jenkins pulled her aside. He was nearly 80, but still sharp. Sister Laverne, Francine told me about your troubles. I want you to know the church is praying for you. Thank you, Pastor. And I want you to know something else. He took her hand in both of his, and his eyes were warm. When your Robert was dying, He came to see me, sat right in my office. He asked me to watch over you after he was gone. He said he was worried about Darnell, worried that the boy had gotten mixed up with the wrong kind of woman. Laverne's eyes filled with tears. Robert tried to warn me. He did more than warn you, sister. Pastor Jenkins squeezed her hand. He protected you. Robert told me that day. He had tears in his eyes. Laverne, actual tears. He said if anything ever happened with the house, if Darnell ever tried anything, there was an envelope in a safety deposit box. Something he wanted you to have. He made me promise to tell you about it if the time came. The pastor's voice grew softer, more emotional. Robert loved you so much. He sat in my office talking about how he needed to protect you even after he was gone. That man saw things clearly. He knew what was coming. Laverne stared at the pastor, her heart pounding. What envelope? I cleaned out Robert's safety deposit box after he died. There was nothing there except some bonds and insurance papers. Pastor Jenkins shook his head. Not that box. Robert had another one at a different bank. SunTrust, over on Cascade Road. He gave me the key before he died and told me to hold on to it until you needed it. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small key. I think maybe now is the time. That afternoon, Laverne and Francine drove to the SunTrust Bank. Laverne's hands were shaking as she inserted the key into box 247. Inside was a single envelope with her name written on it in Robert's familiar handwriting. She opened it with trembling fingers. Her breath caught as she pulled out the letter. My dearest Laverne, if you're reading this, then I wasn't wrong about Darnell. I prayed I was wrong. I hoped I was wrong. I spent so many nights lying awake, wondering if I was being too harsh, too suspicious. But if you're holding this letter, then my worst fears have come true, and our son has betrayed you in the way I feared he would. I know our son. I love him, but I also see him clearly in a way you've never been able to. Darnell has always taken the easy path. He's always been more concerned with appearing successful than actually being successful. And Kendra is making him worse. She's ambitious and calculating, and she sees you, sees us, as obstacles to the life she thinks she deserves. I've heard the way she talks about generational wealth and maximizing assets. I've seen the way she looks at this house like it's nothing more than a number on a balance sheet. She's already thinking about what she can get when we're gone. Baby, I need you to be careful. Don't sign anything without showing it to a lawyer first. Don't trust Darnell's judgment when it comes to money matters. He means well, but he's weak, and Kendra knows exactly how to manipulate him. Inside this envelope, you'll also find the deed to our house. I never told you, but 6 months ago, I transferred the property into a trust, a real trust, set up by a real lawyer. You are the sole beneficiary for life. When you die, it goes to Darnell, but not before. Nobody can take this house from you, Laverne. Not Darnell, not Kendra, not anyone. If someone has tried to get you to sign papers transferring the house, those papers are fraudulent. The house was already in the trust. It wasn't Darnell's to give away. I did this because I love you and because I needed to protect you. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you before now. I was trying to give Darnell the benefit of the doubt. I was hoping I was wrong about him. But if you're reading this, then I wasn't wrong. Fight for what's yours, baby. Don't let them push you around. Our son needs to learn that actions have consequences and that stealing from your own mother is the worst kind of betrayal. And know that I love you, always and forever. Even from here, I'm still taking care of you. You're Robert. Laverne read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Then she looked at the deed. Sure enough, dated 3 years ago, a warranty deed transferring the property to the Washington Family Irrevocable Trust, with Laverne Washington as trustee and sole beneficiary. Francine, she whispered, her voice filled with wonder and grief and overwhelming love. Robert protected me, even when I didn't know I needed protecting. He saw it all coming. He knew what Darnell would do, and he stopped it before it could happen. Francine was reading over her shoulder, tears streaming down her face. That man loved you something fierce. He's still fighting for you, Varen, even now. But I don't understand. If the house was already in this trust, then how did Darnell? He couldn't have, Francine said, comprehension dawning. Those papers you signed weren't valid. You can't give away something you don't own, and Darnell can't sell a house he doesn't have title to. They rushed back to Raymond Butler's office. The young lawyer examined the trust documents, and as he read, his expression changed. Mrs. Washington? Raymond's voice was filled with emotion, not just professional courtesy. Your husband was smarter than both you and your son realized. Do you understand what this means? He saw this coming. He protected you, even knowing you might not understand why at the time. Raymond pulled off his glasses and wiped them. He set up this trust 6 months before he died, which means he was already worried about what might happen. The deed you signed over to your son was fraudulent. He knew, or should have known, that you didn't have clear title to the property, which means the sale to the new owners is void. What happens now? Laverne asked, feeling hope surge through her. Now? Raymond smiled, a fierce smile. Now we go on the offensive. I'm going to file an emergency injunction to stop any eviction. Then I'm going to file a lawsuit against your son for fraud, against Bryant Thompson for conspiracy, and against the buyers for attempting to purchase property under false pretenses. We're going to unsell that house, Mrs. Washington. He leaned forward, his voice intense. You thought you were alone in this fight, but your husband made sure you weren't. He's still taking care of you, even now. He outsmarted them all. Laverne felt the tears come again, but this time they were tears of gratitude and relief and overwhelming love for the man who'd protected her, even from beyond the grave. The legal proceedings moved faster than Laverne expected, but not fast enough to stop what happened next. 3 days before Christmas, there was a knock at her door. When Laverne opened it, she found 2 sheriff's deputies standing on her porch, along with a man in a suit she'd never seen before. Her heart stopped. This was it. They were going to take her home. Mrs. Washington? One of the deputies said. I'm Deputy Martinez. This is Deputy Chen. We have a court order to supervise your removal from this property. Laverne felt the world tilt. Her vision blurred at the edges. She grabbed the doorframe to steady herself. But my lawyer filed an injunction, she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. He said, Ma'am, we don't have any record of an injunction. Our orders are to ensure you vacate the premises by 5 p.m. today. Today? The word came out as a gasp. But the notice said I had 30 days. The man in the suit stepped forward with a cold smile. Mrs. Washington, I'm Gerald Vance, representing the new owners. Due to your refusal to cooperate and the spurious legal claims you've filed, we've obtained an expedited eviction order. You have until 5 o'clock to remove your personal belongings. Anything left after that time will be considered abandoned property. Laverne's hands were shaking so badly she could barely stand. "You can't do this. This is my home. I've lived here for 40 years. This is my home." "According to the legal deed of sale, this property belongs to Silverline Development Corporation. You are trespassing, Mrs. Washington." "I need to call my lawyer." Laverne's voice was breaking now. She was losing control, panic flooding through her. "You're welcome to do that, ma'am," Deputy Martinez said, his voice softer than the lawyer's. "But we have our orders. You need to start packing." Laverne stumbled back into the house, nearly falling. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands and called Raymond. He answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Washington, what's wrong?" "They're here," she gasped out, her breath coming in short, panicked bursts. "The sheriff. They're saying I have to be out by 5 p.m. today. They have a court order. They're going to take my house, Raymond. They're going to—" "Mrs. Washington, listen to me carefully. Breathe. Just breathe." Raymond's voice was firm, commanding. "They must have gone to Judge Pemberton. He's in Silverline's pocket. But listen to me. Do not leave that house. Do you understand? Do not leave." "But the sheriffs—" "The sheriffs can't physically remove you without a separate order. Tell them you're waiting for your attorney. I'm going to file an emergency stay with the appellate court right now. Just don't leave the house. Can you do that for me?" Yes. Yes, I can do that." "Good. Stay strong, Mrs. Washington. Your husband protected you. Now I'm going to protect you too." Laverne hung up and turned to the deputies, trying to steady her voice. "My lawyer says I don't have to leave until he files an emergency motion." Gerald Vance smirked. "Your lawyer is grasping at straws, Mrs. Washington. This is over. You've lost. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be for everyone." But Deputy Martinez was looking at Laverne with sympathy. "Ma'am, if your attorney is filing an emergency motion, we can wait until we hear back from the court. Mr. Vance, unless you have paperwork authorizing physical removal, we're not going to forcibly evict an elderly woman from her home 3 days before Christmas." "This is outrageous," Vance sputtered. "I'll be filing a complaint." "You do that," Deputy Chen said quietly. "But we're not dragging grandmothers out of their houses without proper authorization. We'll wait here until the court rules." 20 minutes later, Francine arrived with half the church choir. They'd heard what was happening and came to stand with Laverne. Soon, there were 15 people on Laverne's front lawn, some holding signs. "Elder abuse is a crime, and shame on Silverline Development." An hour after that, a news van pulled up. A reporter got out with a cameraman. "Mrs. Washington, I'm Vanessa Brooks from Channel 5 News. We received a tip about an elderly woman being evicted from her family home right before Christmas. Would you be willing to tell us your story?" Gerald Vance tried to intervene. "This is a private property matter." "This is a public street," Vanessa interrupted. "And the public has a right to know when a development company tries to throw a 67-year-old woman out of the home she's lived in for 40 years. By 4 p.m., the story was on the news. By 4:30, Raymond called back. "Mrs. Washington, we got the stay. The appellate court issued an emergency order halting all eviction proceedings until a full hearing can be held. You can stay in your house." Laverne felt her knees go weak with relief. "Thank you. Thank you so much." She turned to the deputies and Gerald Vance. "My lawyer got to stay. The appellate court says I can stay." Deputy Martinez nodded. "That's good, ma'am. We'll need to see the paperwork, but if the appellate court issued a stay, we're done here." He tipped his hat to her. Merry Christmas, Mrs. Washington. Gerald Vance left without a word, his face red with anger. That night, Laverne sat on her sofa, exhausted but still in her home. Francine and the choir members had stayed for hours. Now it was late and quiet again. Her phone rang. It was Darnell. "Mama, I saw you on the news." "Did you?" Laverne's voice was ice. "You're making a spectacle of yourself. This is embarrassing." "Do you know how this makes me look? My colleagues saw it. Kendra's parents saw it. They're asking questions. You're humiliating me." "I'm making a spectacle?" "Darnell, you tried to have me forcibly removed from my home 3 days before Christmas." "That wasn't me. That was the development company. They were within their legal rights. You sold them a house you didn't own. But you knew that, didn't you?" Silence. "I found Daddy's letter, Darnell. I found the trust. You knew you didn't have clear title to this house, and you sold it anyway. That's fraud. You committed fraud against your own mother." "Mama, listen. Kendra said. Kendra didn't know. She thought." "I don't want to hear about Kendra. You're a grown man, Darnell. You made these choices. You decided money was more important than your mother." "We needed that money. Do you know what Kendra's been through? Do you know how hard it is for her, coming from the family she comes from, to be married to someone who can barely afford? Then she married the wrong man. That's easy for you to say. You don't understand the pressure, the expectations. Kendra says I've been held back by guilt and obligation to you. She says you've been using me my whole life, using guilt to keep me small, to keep me from reaching my potential. And she's right. We needed that money to break free." "And what about my life? What about my home?" "Fine," Darnell said, his voice turning ugly. "Have it your way. I was trying to help you, trying to set you up somewhere safe. But if you want to be stubborn and ungrateful, that's on you. Don't come crying to me when you're old and alone and that house is falling down around you. Don't come crying to me when you realize you chose a house over your own son." "I didn't choose a house over my son," Laverne said quietly, her voice breaking. "You chose money over your mother." She hung up before he could respond. But the worst was still to come. The legal case moved through the courts over the next months. The developers, Silverline Development Corporation, once they realized they'd been sold property without clear title, were furious. But their fury was directed at Darnell, not Laverne. They'd paid Darnell $720,000 in cash, expecting to renovate and resell for over $1 million. When they discovered the sale was fraudulent, they immediately sued Darnell for the return of their money plus damages. Darnell's world collapsed quickly. He didn't have $720,000 anymore. He and Kendra had spent $650,000 on a house in an expensive suburb and blown through the rest on furniture, cars, and Kendra's shopping habits. In January, Raymond told Laverne that Darnell had been forced to sell the Buckhead house at a loss to partially repay Silverline. But it wasn't enough. Laverne got a frantic call from her son in late January. "Mama, I need help. The developers are coming after me. They want their money back. I don't have it. They're talking about pressing criminal charges." Laverne was silent for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "You told me I didn't need much future, Darnell. How much future do you need?" "Mama, please. I made a mistake. Kendra thought—" "Don't you dare blame your wife. You're a grown man, Darnell. You made these choices." "It was Bryant's idea. He said it would work." "Bryant Thompson is a con artist, and you know it. You knew it then, too." "They could send me to prison, Mama." "You already lost everything that mattered. You lost your integrity. You lost my trust. You lost any claim to being Robert Washington's son. Don't say that. Your father would be ashamed of you. There was a long silence. Then Darnell's voice came back, filled with bitterness. Yeah, well, Dad's not here, is he? He's been dead for 3 years. And you know what? Maybe if he'd left us more money, I wouldn't have had to do this. Maybe if he'd been more successful instead of being a glorified janitor his whole life. Your father was not a janitor. Then I wouldn't have needed to take matters into my own hands. But no, he left us with nothing. Just this worthless house in a worthless neighborhood. And now you're holding on to it like it's some kind of shrine. Well, good luck with that, Mama. Enjoy your empty house and your self-righteousness. Laverne hung up, shaking with rage and heartbreak. A week later, Kendra called her. Laverne, we need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. Well, I have something to say to you, so you're going to listen. Kendra's voice was sharp, venomous. Your son is falling apart because of your stubbornness. Do you know he cries himself to sleep at night? Do you know he can barely eat? Do you know he's on antidepressants now because of the stress you're putting him through? Then maybe he shouldn't have committed fraud. He was trying to help you. That house is too much for someone your age. You're a liability waiting to happen. One fall, one fire, one mistake, and you're dead. Or worse, you're in a nursing home draining Medicaid and becoming a burden on taxpayers. We were trying to prevent that. Is that what you think? That I'm a burden? I think you're too old to live on your own safely, and the statistics back that up. Elderly people living alone have a 40% higher mortality rate. They're targets for crime. They can't maintain their properties. You're sitting on $700,000 worth of real estate that you can't even take care of properly, while young families who could actually contribute to society, are priced out of home ownership. Laverne felt her blood boiling. This is my home. Your home? You mean the house that's literally falling apart? The house with the old wiring and the roof that needs replacing? That's not a home, Laverne. That's a money pit. That's a waste. We were trying to give you a better life. We were trying to move you somewhere appropriate for someone your age and condition. My condition? You're elderly. You're alone. You're clearly not thinking clearly if you can't see that we were trying to help you. But no, you had to be selfish and vindictive. You had to ruin your own son's life because you're too stubborn to accept reality. The reality is that you and Darnell tried to steal my home. We tried to liquidate an asset that was being wasted. And now, because of your selfishness, we've lost everything. We had to sell our house, Laverne. Our house. The home we worked so hard for. We're living in a 2-bedroom rental in a mediocre neighborhood because of you. Because of me? You're living there because Darnell committed fraud. He did it for us, for our family, for our baby. Laverne felt her heart skip. You're pregnant? 4 months. We were going to tell you at Christmas dinner. We were going to surprise you. But you ruined everything. Now Darnell is being sued for nearly $1 million. We had to sell our house. And I'm raising a baby in a rental apartment that's barely bigger than a closet. All because you couldn't let go of your precious house. Kendra's voice turned even colder. And you want to know the worst part? That baby will grow up knowing her grandmother chose a house over her own family. She'll grow up knowing that her father tried to provide for her, tried to build a future for her, and his own mother destroyed him for it. That's not what happened. That's exactly what happened. We were willing to let you stay in the house while we used the equity. We were being generous. We were giving you the best of both worlds. But you had to be difficult. You had to play the victim. You had to drag lawyers and judges and the media into it. Well, congratulations, Laverne. You won. I hope that house keeps you warm at night, because it's all you're ever going to have. When you die alone in that place, don't blame us. We tried to help you. We tried to save you from yourself. Save me? Laverne's voice was shaking. You tried to make me homeless. You tried to steal my home 3 days before Christmas. We tried to transition you to appropriate housing. There's a difference. But you're too stubborn and too selfish to see it. And now my husband, your son, is going to spend the next 30 years paying for your vindictiveness. I hope you're happy. I hope it was worth it. Tell me something, Kendra, Laverne said, her voice deadly quiet. Did you ever love my son? Or was he always just a means to an end for you? There was a pause. Then Kendra laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Love? Laverne, I'm a realist. Love doesn't pay the bills. Love doesn't give you the life you deserve. I saw potential in Darnell. I saw a man from Morehouse with connections, with family assets, with opportunity. I saw someone I could build a life with. But you know what? I was wrong. He's weak. He's useless. He let you destroy everything we worked for. So, to answer your question, no. I don't love him. I probably never did. And now, I'm stuck with him and this baby and this pathetic life because he couldn't even steal a house from his own mother correctly. Laverne hung up, her hands shaking with rage. That evening, she called Raymond. I want you to pursue every legal avenue available, every charge, every penalty, everything. I'm done protecting him. Are you sure, Mrs. Washington? I'm sure. He needs to face consequences, real consequences. In March, the judge issued the final ruling. Laverne sat in the courtroom, her hands folded in her lap. The courtroom was nearly empty, just Laverne, Raymond, Francine, Darnell, his lawyer, and representatives from Silverline. The sale is void, the judge declared. The property in question belongs to the Washington Family Trust, with Mrs. Laverne Washington as the sole beneficiary for life. Mr. Washington had no legal authority to sell said property. Laverne watched Darnell's face as the judge spoke. She saw the moment reality hit him, the way his face went pale, the way his hands gripped the table. Furthermore, the judge continued, Mr. Washington is ordered to pay restitution to Silverline Development Corporation in the amount of $720,000, plus interest and legal fees, totaling approximately $850,000. A payment plan will be established. Darnell half rose from his seat, his face twisted with panic and rage. Your Honor, I don't have that kind of money. I can't. This is insane. My mother, she planned this. She and my father, they trapped me. They set me up. Sit down, Mr. Washington, the judge said sharply. No, this isn't fair. She's the one who should be. She manipulated me. She made me think I owned the house. This is entrapment. Darnell's lawyer was frantically trying to pull him back into his seat, whispering urgently. Mr. Washington, if you do not sit down and compose yourself, I will hold you in contempt of court. Darnell sank back into his chair, but he was shaking, his face red. Laverne could see him struggling not to explode. The judge removed his glasses and looked directly at Darnell. Mr. Washington, you preyed on your mother's trust, her love, and her lack of legal knowledge. You attempted to render her homeless for your own financial gain. I was trying to help her. Darnell shouted, standing again. I was trying to get her into a safe place. She's too old to live alone. She's going to hurt herself. I was being responsible. Mr. Washington, and my father. My father is the real criminal here. He set up that trust behind everyone's backs. He trapped me. He made it impossible for me to access my own inheritance. It wasn't your inheritance while your mother is alive, the judge said coldly. She's 67 years old. How much longer is she going to live? 10 years? 15? And I'm supposed to just wait? Watch her waste away in that house while my family, while my child. He was spiraling now, his voice rising, his gestures becoming more frantic. Darnell, his lawyer hissed. Stop talking, now. But Darnell couldn't stop. This is all her fault. Her and my father. They did this to me. They set me up to fail. And now I'm going to lose everything. My house, my career, my family. And she's sitting there like she's won something. Like she's the victim. He turned to face Laverne directly, his eyes wild. Are you happy now, Mama? Is this what you wanted? To destroy me? To ruin my life? Because congratulations, you did it. You and Dad, you both won. I hope you're proud of yourself. The judge's voice cut through the courtroom like a whip. Mr. Washington, you will sit down and be silent, or I will have the bailiff remove you from this courtroom and add contempt charges to your already considerable problems. Darnell collapsed back into his chair, his chest heaving. Laverne could see tears on his face now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage and self-pity. The judge continued, his voice hard. What you did, Mr. Washington, is a betrayal of the worst kind. You are fortunate that the district attorney, at your mother's request, has declined to pursue criminal charges. But make no mistake, what you did was not just legally wrong, but morally reprehensible. You will spend the next 30 years paying for your crime. The gavel came down with a crack. Darnell sat frozen, his face white, staring at nothing. Then he turned to look at Laverne. His expression was pure hatred. I'll never forgive you for this, he said, loud enough for her to hear. Never. You destroyed me. You destroyed your own son. And for what? A house? A house that'll be mine anyway when you're dead? Was it worth it, Mama? Was it worth losing me? Laverne looked at her son, really looked at him. She saw the boy who'd taken his first steps in her living room, the teenager who'd graduated from Morehouse, the man who'd stood beside her at Robert's funeral, and she saw a stranger who'd tried to take everything from her and was now playing the victim. She stood up and walked out of the courtroom without looking back. Darnell's voice followed her, broken and desperate. Mama! Mama, you can't just walk away! Mama! But she didn't stop. She kept walking, Francine at her side, until the courthouse doors closed behind them and she couldn't hear her son's voice anymore. Spring came to Atlanta, bringing warm breezes and blooming dogwoods. Laverne stood in her backyard, her hands in the soil, planting tomatoes. The garden was coming back to life after a long winter. She'd spent weeks out here, pulling weeds, turning soil, preparing for new growth. It felt right, taking something that had been neglected and bringing it back to life. One evening in late May, she found an envelope in her mailbox. Inside was a money order for $200 and a handwritten note. Mama, this is the first payment on my debt to you. Not the legal debt. I'm paying that to Silverline. This is the moral debt. $200 isn't much. It's all I can afford. I'm working at Home Depot. It's honest work, hard work. It's teaching me things I should have learned long ago. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm trying. Kendra had the baby last month. A girl. Robin, after your mother. I'm paying child support even though Kendra doesn't want me involved. But she's my daughter, and I'll take care of her financially. Maybe someday, when I've proven I've changed, we can talk again. I love you, Mama. I'm sorry for everything. Darnell. Laverne read the note 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and put it in her desk drawer, along with the money order. It wasn't enough. $200 couldn't undo the trauma. It couldn't erase the betrayal. But it was a start. She sat alone that evening on her front porch, watching the sun set. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number with a photo. A baby girl, dark eyes and curly hair, wrapped in a pink blanket. Below it, Robin Elizabeth Washington, born May 15th. She has your eyes, Mama. Laverne stared at the photo for a long time. Her granddaughter. Robert's granddaughter. She saved the photo, but didn't respond. Not yet. Maybe not ever. December came around again. 1 full year since the eviction notice had been taped to her door. Laverne stood on a stepladder, hanging a new sign next to her front door. She'd had it custom made, carved from wood, painted in rich burgundy and gold. Washington Home, established 1985. Built with love, protected by grace, standing strong through faith. She stepped back to admire it. It looked perfect. Tomorrow, she'd host Christmas dinner for her church family. Francine and Raymond, Pastor Jenkins, the choir members who'd stood with her that terrible day. Her phone rang, Darnell's number. Laverne hesitated, then answered. Mama? His voice was tentative, uncertain. I was hoping, could I come by? Just for a few minutes? I want Robin to meet her grandmother. Laverne closed her eyes. She thought about Robert, about the letter he'd written, about everything that had happened. Where are you living, Darnell? College Park, a 1-bedroom apartment. It's not much, but it's clean. I'm making it work. And Kendra? Gone. The divorce was finalized 2 months ago. She signed away her parental rights. It's just me and Robin now. How are you supporting her? The Home Depot job. I'm up for a supervisor position. It won't make me rich, but it's steady. Honest. I'm trying, Mama. I'm really trying. Laverne felt something in her chest shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. Not tomorrow, she said finally. Tomorrow is for my church family, but maybe the day after, Boxing Day. You can bring Robin by, for an hour. No promises beyond that. Thank you, Mama. Thank you so much. After they hung up, Laverne walked to her front door and ran her hand along the new sign she'd just hung. Built with love, protected by grace, standing strong through faith. She'd survived. She'd fought back. She'd protected what Robert had built for her. Epilogue, Boxing Day. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 p.m. Laverne opened the door. Darnell stood on her porch, looking different. Thinner, steadier somehow. He wore clean jeans and a simple shirt. No designer labels. And in his arms, he held a beautiful little girl with curious dark eyes. Mama, he said quietly. This is Robin. Laverne looked at her son. She saw the changes, the humility in his eyes, the calluses on his hands from honest work. Come in, she said, stepping back. But just for an hour, Darnell. We have a long way to go. I know, he said. I know we do, but I'm willing to walk that road, for as long as it takes. He carried Robin inside. Laverne took Robin from her father's arms. The little girl was uncertain at first, but then she patted Laverne's face with one small hand and said, "Gamma?" "That's right, baby," Laverne said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm your Gamma." She carried her granddaughter to the window. "See that garden out there, Robin? Your great-grandfather planted that garden 40 years ago. He said it was for his grandchildren. He was waiting for you." Robin pointed at the flowers. "Pretty." "Yes, baby, pretty." Laverne looked at Darnell, who was standing by the door. "Sit down," she told him. "We need to talk. Real talk. No lies, no excuses." "I can do that," Darnell said. "I want to do that." They sat, and for the first time in over a year, they really talked. About the fraud, about Kendra, about the mistakes he'd made, about the Home Depot job, and Robin's first smile, and how hard it was being a single father with crushing debt. Laverne listened, and slowly, carefully, she began to see the glimmer of the man Darnell might become. Not the man he'd been, but someone new, someone humbled and trying, genuinely trying, to do better. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. When the hour was up, Darnell stood to leave. He carefully took Robin from Laverne's arms. "Can we come back?" he asked. "Next week, maybe?" Laverne thought about it, about Robert's letter, about the trust, about the long road ahead. "We'll see," she said. "Keep sending those payments. Keep showing me you've changed. And maybe, in time—" "I understand," Darnell said. "Thank you, Mama, for letting me in today." After they left, Laverne stood in her living room, surrounded by photos and memories and the life she and Robert had built. She walked to the mantel and picked up the framed photo of Robert from 1985, him standing in front of their newly purchased house, grinning with pride. "You were right, baby," she whispered. "About everything. You protected me, even when I didn't know I needed it. Thank you." She set the photo back down and walked to her front door. She stepped outside onto the porch into the December evening. The air was crisp and clear. Christmas lights twinkled on neighboring houses. Somewhere down the street, children were laughing. Laverne placed her hand on the new sign she'd hung, "Washington Home, established 1985, and felt the smooth wood under her palm. She looked out at her neighborhood, at the street where she'd walked for 40 years, at the houses where families lived their lives. This was her home, her sanctuary, her victory. She was 68 years old, and she had all the future she needed. And standing here, on her front porch, with her hand resting on the sign that proclaimed this house was still hers, Laverne Washington smiled. She was home. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. Word count: 13,421 words.